sound different, you know, on these videos.
Is everyone on a video, or is anyone on a non-video like me?
This is David. The majority of people are not on video right now.
I suppose I could try to learn to do it, but I usually type in the number, but I could learn to click on the link. If I click on the link, will it take me directly into just like the video?
It should, yes. At least it did for me when I did it.
It prompts you to see if you want video or just audio.
And do you have to put in a password then too?
No, you shouldn't have to.
Okay.
You should be able to just click on the link. I do like WebEx. I mean, WebEx is a little bit more secured, but it's really, I mean, everybody thought, well, that's, you know, WebEx is worse than Zoom.
Oh, I like Zoom.
I mean,
I like Zoom. I'm a Zoom girl.
I think they work about the same.
This is Wendy. I've heard that Zoom has better accessibility for some people than WebEx does.
I would agree. And you can just join it by putting in the meeting ID and password, and you don't have to worry about clicking on a link if you don't want to, and you can still, then you can better use your video.
Actually, we met with somebody that works with the deaf and hard of hearing community, and she said that there's an app called Google Meets, and they really are phenomenal about capturing the other populations that we often miss. Yeah. So she recommended that we should try that too at some point.
All right, we are a few minutes past 12:30. And I will go ahead and get the meeting started now. This is the September edition of the Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee. My name is David Fenley. I am the chair of this committee. Counting for quorum here, bear with me. I'm gonna just kind of run through and do a roll call for folks. So if you hear your name, just give me a shout out, okay? So I've heard Sam Jasmine.
Here.
Ken Rogers. You're muted, Ken.
I don't hear him.
Come back. Ken, just say your name if you're whenever you can. Let's see, Diane.
I'm here. Hi, everybody.
Hello, Heidi. When you get a chance, just check in, Heidi. Eric.
Yep, I'm here, David.
Awesome, Patty.
Whoops.
Hello. And I have one call-in user that is a 612322 number. Is that a committee member?
No, that's Christine Kennan,
okay.
Senior Manager, Metro Mobility.
Awesome. Patsy. You're muted.
Here.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Are there any committee members that are present that I did not mention?
David, could you hear me? This is Diane. I wasn't sure if you could hear me when I said hi earlier because my screen froze up.
I did not. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Daryl Paulson, vice chair.
This is Heidi.
You're just front and center, Daryl. I just didn't call your name. All right, and Heidi too. Fantastic.
You missed Jeff Danes.
Jeff Danes. Okay, now
Okay.
Danes, I'm guessing you called in? Or is that a picture of your dog that I see? Well, that's perfect because that took us over the quorum
Well, I don't know
threshold.
if Jeff is here or not, but you didn't call his name.
Oh, I was only calling people's names that I knew were in the room, and then I was asking for anybody whose name that I did not call, who's a committee member, who is present. Please speak now. Because we're at 8. Oh no, and 9 is me. I'm counted in that as well. Perfect.
Hey, David, this
Looks
is
like
Wendy.
Ken is here.
Yeah, Ken just signed back in again. I think he signed out and signed back in.
Okay, so Ken, if you can hear, just chime in so I know that you're present. And I do see your login info though. It doesn't say you're muted, so there might be some technical difficulties.
Sir Chair, am I muted?
You are not muted.
Okay, is it *6 if I need to?
Yes.
Okay, I can mute if you'd like.
And that's on the phone. The phone is *6.
If we start to get a lot of feedback, I think I think everybody should be on mute unless they're speaking.
Something on the thing setting.
Yes. So while Ken kind of figures that out, I'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping. So if you're a call-in user, *6 mutes your line. If you follow the link, you can either click the mute button on the bottom left of the screen, or you can do keystroke Control-M. That will mute you as well. When we have a lot of folks who are unmuted, there tends to be feedback. So if you can, please try to keep your line muted.
Up all the way.
Did I see Carrie? Carrie, did you jump on? Carrie Sheldon?
Put it on
Fantastic.
speaker.
All right, so are there any other members whose name, committee members whose name I haven't called who are on the line?
You got mine, David. This is Jeff Danes. My computer won't let me in.
All right, Jeff. And you're the 612-219 number?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
612-219-7929. Yep. Are you there?
I'm here, yes. Sorry, I'm just taking notes so I know who everybody is that's in the room, so just bear with me. Also, another housekeeping issue, Heidi made a good point, before you speak, for accessible meetings, before you speak each time, just give us your name so we all know who's talking. And all right, so we have a quorum, definitely, even if Ken is not able to jump on. We have a quorum now without him. But I will. All right. So let's move forward with approving the agenda. Do I have a motion?
This is Jeff Danes. I move approval of the agenda.
Sam Jasmine, I second.
Okay, I'm just gonna go down the list here. And I'm looking for a yay, a nay, or a abstention. Daryl?
Yay.
Diane?
Yay. Yay.
Heidi? We can't hear you, Heidi, so just chime in whenever you can. Eric?
Yay.
Thank you, Heidi. Eric?
Yay.
Patty? Patsy?
Yes.
Carrie? Looks like you are unmuted, Carrie, so a yes or no for the approval of the agenda. You can also give me a thumbs up if you want, or type it in. Thumbs up, Carrie? Or thumbs down? We'll come back to Carrie. Jeff?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, that passes. Let's move on to the minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve last month's minutes.
Patsy approves.
Thank you, Patsy. Is there a second?
Jasmine, second.
Sam, Jeff, seconds. All right. I'll go down the list again with Daryl. In a yes, no, or abstention.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes.
Heidi?
Aye.
Eric? Just call it out whenever you can, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you. Patty?
Yes.
Patsy?
Yes.
Carrie? And then, yeah, so Carrie, whenever you can chime in, you can give me a thumbs up. You can type it in if you want. It looks like you're still unmuted, but you might be having some audio issues. Jeff?
Yeah.
And then Ken?
Yes.
You got it working, Ken. All right.
Finally.
And I vote aye as well. I realize I didn't do that on either vote, but I vote yes on both of them. All right. Thank you very, very much. Let's move on. Just 1 second here. Sorry, everybody. Did anybody else join us that are committee members that that were not acknowledged earlier? Cool. So we are still on everything's going great. All right, let's move on to the Metro Transit update. Robin Kaufman, are you in the room? You are in the room. If you're ready, take it away, Robin.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm glad to see everyone today. I'm here to give an update first about Metro Transit activities. The first item is that starting September 12th, we're going to be doing some significant service adjustments. We're starting to get the word out now, but we're going to be basically increasing the frequency of a lot of our very popular routes. We've basically been monitoring where the travel volumes, what routes are seeing high ridership, and we're going to be resuming nearly full weekday schedules for a handful of routes. It's too long of a list to send, but what I could do is send a link to the press release so people can look up their specific routes that they're interested in. Along with that, we'll also be increasing our LRT service as well. So that is going to be going back to 10-minute frequency. So that is another big change. And there's some other buses that we're going to be tweaking a little bit as far as what their service frequency is, but maybe not going all the way back to full schedules. And then there's about, it's a little over 50 routes, mostly express commuter routes that are going to continue to be suspended. And the reason for that is we just are not seeing the demand on those routes, so that those will continue to be suspended. So I just wanted to give an update on that. Again, we're going to be getting information out on our website. We did some press release. We've got social media, rider alerts, and we've updated our website. So we just want to make sure that people have that information and can help help us get the word out that things are going to be changing on September 12th. Be happy to take any questions if there's any questions. And again, I can send the link. There's just way too many routes to read for the purpose of the presentation. But if people are, if there's a specific route, I could let you know, or I can send the link to send out to Taac members.
Chair Finley, this is Vice Chair Darrell. Robin, I have a question. Is the frequency of the light rail going back to 10 minutes? What is it right now? Because
good question.
And are we adhering to the 10? Are we adhering to the 10 to 15 policy, just like we have been on our buses? Are we still adhering to that ratio for 40-foot versus 60-foot?
Good questions, committee member. Right now the light rail lines are operating at about every 15 minutes, and so that's going to increase to 10. So that is a change. And then for the number of riders per bus, we are sticking with the guideline of 10 for 40-foot bus, a regular bus, and then 15 passengers for an articulated bus.
And when that's not being adhered to most often, like during high frequency times and during rush hour times, who gets that information if somebody reports it, and what happens?
Committee member and chair, that's also a good question. For the buses, if someone were to submit a complaint, you can do that at our customer service line, or you can do that online. That goes to our customer service, and we've been providing a daily report to our operations staff. So our operations director, bus operations director, would receive an email that has any complaints that we receive during that day. And then we can also review it. We can review it over the course of a week and see if there's trends or anything. Hoping with the increase, we've been monitoring, operations has been monitoring the routes, and the routes that are increasing are the ones that have pretty high frequency. And so hopefully, with the increased number of buses running those routes, we'll see less of the overflow, or exceeding the 10 or 15 passengers.
Sam, Jasmine, I have a question.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sam. This is David. And so if you have a question, don't right now, don't wait for acknowledgement of the chair. I know that we usually do that, but on this medium, I think it's easier just announce who you are and then ask a question. But I do appreciate Sam the waiting for acknowledgement from the chair. That's what we usually do. If things get out of hand, I might take that back, but I trust you all will keep things civilized.
My question is this going to open up and happen regardless of what the numbers of COVID do in Minnesota? So you'll increase and whatnot, despite, the numbers are going up. I was just curious if does it matter where the numbers are, and will the change happen regardless?
That's a good question. I think if I understand correctly, this change is going to occur on September 12th. We are always, watching COVID cases, and of course taking the direction from the governor's office. And if there's any changes as far as orders, of course we would comply with those and make sure that we get that communicated out to our customers.
Sam, Jasmine, another question, sorry. How do you know how many, besides if somebody decides to pay, what the numbers are happening on LRT or the buses? Is the driver actually, I presume he's busy driving or she's busy driving, and they're not really counting. So how are you knowing when it's too full? Is it just through customer complaints?
I'd have to look at the specifics, but the operators are generally tracking that, and if there is an overflow bus, they can communicate to the transit control center. They're able to communicate to them that we need to get another bus out there, that that they're overloaded and that there's customers waiting. And then we do have our fare. We are able to track with fare checks too.
Okay.
This is Heidi. I'm glad Sam brought, you guys are bringing this up, because I made a complaint, and basically the transit people I made the complaint to said that basically they really can't do anything, because I've seen ever since you got the plexiglass thing, it's been an issue where they'll get on the bus and, well, this happened right after when you switched over to the front of the bus to pay, and not everybody's boarding out the back like they're supposed to. And I heard a long speech when I called to get like ride, if I can actually do my ride, from here to there. And I heard your little speech, and I did not see anything that you talked about. And then the plexiglass thing is kind of like, well, if you don't wear a mask, I can't force you, whatever. I'm safe, the driver. But now I'm seeing paranoid people on the bus because it actually happened. And one lady said, I have asthma, but she had her mask down. And another guy sat way in the back. And I think all colors of, because we're a mixed group of people who ride the bus, need to be, somehow you need to talk about it. And then the other thing is, I think we need to start talking about this again. The handicapped seats are being used for all the wrong reasons. So, because now more and more people are getting on the bus. And then the other thing is, West St. Paul has got road construction, and you guys didn't help put up signs saying where we can stand and not stand for the buses. So we can talk about that sometime if you want to, because in West St. Paul, right next to Verizon, which is right across, real close to Walmart, people are wondering if they should stand there or not, and we don't know how long the road construction is going to be. There wasn't very clear indication, so you have to walk many blocks down to get where you're going.
Can I ask what route that is? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's the 75 and the 68 and I want to say the 21. No, not the 21. It only goes to Signal Hill. It's like a loop thing. But the thing is, they all go down there and past that spot, and we found out at nighttime they go around it, and we didn't know. You don't have good indications. All you have is that you had made some changes in the past, but that's about it. You'd never put the new schedule up, the bus schedule.
Yeah. I'll look into those and see if we were aware of the construction and how long it's going to last, and see if we can.
Because in the wintertime, you're going to do some hiking, so you need to come up with a plan where we can kind of be close, or we can stand at the closest bus stop either way, so we don't have to do a lot of hiking.
Yep.
Because some people were very concerned, and I told them, I know for a fact you can catch the bus here. And the guy said, thank you very much, because he had to go home from work.
This is David.
I wanted to bring that up. So that's my biggest concern, is that ever since we got the plexiglass, things have been kind of falling apart. And then I've seen fares not being paid either.
This is David. Robin, I'm sure you were taking notes. So Heidi, we will address the accessible seating in today's agenda.
Okay.
As well, but I'd like to give Robin a chance to respond to each of your questions. They were sort of rapid fire, so I don't know if Robin, you got them all down.
Sorry.
It's okay. So as this meeting moves on into future meetings, when you ask a question, let's do one question at a time. Give the speaker a chance to respond, and then ask another question, so we can try to keep on topic and keep things relatively streamlined here. Did you want to address questions, Robin?
Um, I think I'll just mention not boarding out the back. Thank you for that feedback. I can take that back to our operations staff. I haven't heard that concern before, so I'm glad that you're raising it and we can look into it. You know, we do still allow people to board out the front, of course, if they need to. So, you know, it's hard to know. It's kind of like the masks. It's hard to know if there's a need that they need to, you know, if they have a medical condition or something that they need to board out the front, or if they are unable to wear a mask. So those are, you know, it's hard to know. As far as masks, you know, we are expecting our customers to wear them. The enforcement is very difficult. Obviously, we can't have police officers or folks on every single bus or train, and it's hard for our operators to be in a position of enforcing. So we're taking more of an approach of education, and we've been out at our bus stops over the last 4 weeks. We've been out and we've distributed over 70,000 masks to our customers. So if we see people that aren't wearing a mask, we do provide them, and we do have some more available too. So we'll be out there again. So we're, you know, trying to ask people to wear them as much as possible. But again, people may have a reason why they can't wear them, or they're not able to wear them. Some people may not have them, but again, we're trying to address that. So we're taking more of the education and provision approach than enforcement.
What I wanted to say, this is Heidi, it's just some people aren't taking it seriously, and I'm worried about the future, you know, and then there's others who, so really my complaint is half the world is doing it correctly and the other half is making it hard for the one. And then I've seen people paranoid, you know, and now they're starting to say, you need your mask, and we don't need a big giant argument on the bus, you know. And then the plexiglass thing is just kind of slowing it down, because now the bus drivers, before it was like a little bit overkill, you know, because I even got yelled at for something I didn't even know I did wrong and things like that. But at the same time, ever since the plexiglass went up, everything is kind of going good and bad, you know, because there are people who truly are following this, you know, exactly what you're trying to say. And then there's people who are just not, they don't care if their life depended on it, you know. So I'm seeing both sides.
This is David. There really is no, Heidi, there really is no good answer on the mask issue. It's either, I mean, there's kind of two options. It's either they enforce it strictly, and then folks with disabilities who can't wear masks won't be able to use transit, which isn't necessarily good, but might be better for public health. That's not a good solution. Or, you know, you require masks, but then, you know, have the policy that you can't, for a medical or disability reason, wear a mask, and we won't, you know, strictly adhere to that. You know, you have public health concerns, you have paranoia, all the things you said are correct. I mean, I don't think neither answer is a good one, but living in a pandemic's not a good thing either. So yeah, I understand your frustration, Heidi, but again, there really is, I mean, there's no good answer.
So I just noticed more after when we had more freedom, you know, and the plexiglass went up, things have been changing way more. So I just wanted to bring that out, because when I called, it was more like all they can do is just as much advertising or education, and then from there it's like whatever. That's what I was told.
Well, Chair and Robin, the one thing I would say, and this is Vice Chair Daryl Paulson, is unless you have exactly all your drivers adhering to the same policy and wearing the mask themselves, okay, then you'll never get 100% of your customers or your ridership to buy into that either, because not all your drivers buy into it either, and that's pretty apparent. I ride the bus probably 3 times a week, you know, or so, and that's during the pandemic, and you have, I would say you have about half and half compliance on both sides. whether it's the drivers and customers, or whether it's the drivers just simply not buying into it.
And actually, we did, just because we've had questions about that, we actually did, we did a compliance check with our drivers. Yes. And we observed all of the drivers and found a very well into the 90s percentile of people complying. You know, keeping in mind that there are times when drivers may have reasons as well, like asthma or health concerns, so they aren't able to wear a mask. But that's why we have the plexiglass and the protection. And also masks are difficult. Like I have glasses, and you know, having wearing the mask can steam up your glasses, and so there are some operators that aren't able to wear them because obviously that's unsafe to have fogging up glasses. So we've taking that into consideration. We actually have almost perfect compliance on the.
I wear glasses as well, so I completely understand everything that you're saying. And I mean, actually I've talked to some of the drivers that don't do it, and the reasons why it's interesting. It's most of them, it's not a health reason, so just be aware of that.
Jeff Danes here. I just have a question about. It's sort of in regards to the mask, but I think we've vetted that out pretty well. Has there been a change in security, an increase in security on the light rail? Or what have your observations been about the security on the light rail?
I have not heard of any updates on light rail security. That might be something I need to look into. And is there a specific, is there a specific element that you're looking for?
Yeah, no, I've had people just ask me about it, like how safe is it, you know, since the social unrest, have there been changes in the security? Do they say anything to people about wearing masks or not wearing masks? Or I don't know. It's just a question that's come up from 3 different people. So,
Jeff, this is
and I haven't been on the light rail since springtime myself, so.
Jeff, this is Daryl Paulson again. I am
sure.
And I do ride light rail. I was just on it yesterday for about like 4 or 5 trips. It seems to be very user friendly. I prefer to use light rail versus the bus system. I mean, I have more issues with probably music or folks asking me for money or things like that than I ever do as far as feeling safe or unsecured on the light rail.
Thank you.
Maybe if maybe this is something, one of those topics I could take back and see if we could have someone maybe from our police department come and give an update at one of our future meetings.
Sure.
This is David.
I do know on the city buses, some of the bus drivers are doing a good job with some of the people who have emotional problems or disability problems, you know, where we have to calm them down or just get them to relax or get them to apply to so that we can all ride the bus. There are drivers, and maybe you can do some training on that, because I know the disability community is doing training on different kinds of disabilities. So maybe you can do a class on how to work with it, you know, when they get excited, or, you know, because really they're not doing, some of them aren't doing anything wrong. It's just the way their brain or whatever is going on. But they just need to just be in their spot and sit and go wherever they're going.
Yeah.
You know? And so maybe you can do some learning techniques and bring some people in to talk about that, because now we're getting out more. Things are, you know, changing, you know.
Well, we actually do have some training that our drivers go through, and we actually have a program called Red Kite that does focus training on how to diffuse situations and to handle conflict. So that's actually a program that we do make available to our operators. Good observation.
Robin, this is Allison. What was it called again?
Red Kite. I think it's Red Kite.
Kites, K-I-K-Y-T-E-S, or?
K-I-T-E-S, I think.
Okay, thank you.
I'll look it up really quick when I'm not presenting, but just to
That's correct, Robin. This is Claire Schleichert talking. That's correct. It's called Red Kite. Yep.
Thank
and
you.
It's a 3-day, 8-hour-a-day class. So they get a full 24 hours of that training.
And that training, does it encompass, this is Daryl Paulson again, does that encompass empathy training or any type of equity training and what that looks like when you're dealing with different segments, different populations, different ages, different abilities, so forth?
I'd have to look at the exact program. I'm not that familiar with it.
Okay. Maybe we could do that in conjunction with the police department coming in.
Yeah.
And you know, that could kind of fill up one of our monthly
agenda. If I can go back really quick to the last, maybe the last item was the construction that Heidi mentioned. I'll look into that. I'll look into see if we had notices about the construction and if we needed to do a detour and get it signed. So I'll follow up with that with operations.
Thank you, because they were asking, is this a bus stop or not? Because it acts like it is, because cars are going down, but the buses can't go all the way down. So thinking we should go around it, you know? And so, so we were trying to figure it out, because usually you're very good, like in downtown St. Paul, telling us we're not to stand, you know? So the suburbs need to, whenever the suburbs do a big hoo-ha, then that needs to be the same there too, you know? They should tell you if you take a bus, you know? Because we're not going to know. It's just a popular spot. That much I know.
And then the final comment was just about fares being paid. And we do, you know, some people will be paying on board, and we are, but we're still trying to encourage people as much as possible to use hands-free, touch-free type of fare payment. So, you know, we're still encouraging people as much as possible to pay using the app or pay, like if they're, you know, if they're near a LRT station to tap there. Of course, but people can pay when they enter as well. So just a reminder that people may have already paid or may paid on the app, and so they may not actually tap or pay when they board a bus. So
this is David. A couple things. I might be incorrect, but I'm not sure that the payment issue is in the scope of this committee. I think it's a good observation, though, Heidi. Also, when it comes to a perceived uptick in criminal activity or an actual uptick in criminal activity, I'd like to maybe have is there data that shows that things are less safe? And if not, then I don't think it's necessary for us to talk about it. But I mean, if people don't feel safe, maybe that's something that we can discuss. Did you want to, you don't have to speak to either one of those, Robin. I just wanted to toss that in there.
No, but maybe that would be, if I can, maybe that would be a good jumping off point to the second item I was going to give an update on. And that is, if you recall, last time I was here, we did what we were calling the listening and learning through crisis engagement process. The survey just closed on the 27th. So we haven't had a time to delve into the data yet, but we did receive, we received over 1,400 surveys via the online SurveyMonkey survey. And then we had 423 in-person conversations at transit centers, bus stops, and light rail stations. So we have, you know, that's almost 18 or 1900 people that we talked to. And so we're eager to kind of delve into the question, because one of the questions was, you know, what are your primary concerns and priorities right now? And so we're eager to delve into the, you know, concerns about safety and security and health and those sorts of things. So my hope is that by our October meeting that we might have some results or some summaries that we can share that we can share with y'all. So maybe that would be a good indicator of what we're hearing from our customers.
Just Heidi, I'm just happy that you got a huge number to work with. So then you know your listeners are out there, are paying attention and want to help you.
Yep, absolutely.
I hope it really does make a difference and not where we've heard this like 5 billion times and we have to figure out a new way to fix that problem or just ignore it, whatever. But I'm hoping it will make some changes in a way that we can move forward in a positive and clean up some stuff that we've been wanting to clean up for a long time.
This is David. Do you have more things you want to discuss, Robin?
Nope, I think that's the end of my report, but I'll turn off my camera, but I'm going to stay on because we're going to talk about Network Next and outreach in a few slides or in a few minutes. So
perfect. I know this is important to most members, so I did want to give a chance to people who haven't asked a question yet. If you wanted to engage Robin right now, and just a reminder, if you haven't asked a question yet, please, by all means, this is your opportunity to ask Robin. I realize we're over the time, but I think this is important to all of us, so I'm okay with giving a couple extra minutes to folks if they want to ask. Fantastic. That was easy. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you all. Appreciate the feedback, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Cool. All right. So next we got Kyle Burrows. We won't cut into your time, Kyle. You'll have a full 30 minutes. But you are here to talk about Network Next. So please, by all means, take it away.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee members, for having me today. As David mentioned, my name is Kyle Burrows, and I'm a planner in the BRT Projects Office, here to give you an update on the Network Next project. And just a quick technical question before I begin here. Should I share slides? Can I share my screen, or is that done by Allison or...
No, it's not done by me. You would do it.
Okay, I will share my screen then, and folks, let me know if they can't see my screen in just 1 second. And I believe that these were sent out ahead of time as well, and it's the same content. But can folks see, access the slides here that I'm sharing?
Those of us on the WebEx, yes, but just as a reminder, be sure to just thoroughly, this is David, to just thoroughly describe what's on the slide.
Yes, yep, I will do that. And
you see it clearly.
That's great. So I'll go ahead and get through this then. This is to provide an update on the Network Next project, which you may remember we were at the Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee last September, I believe, to provide an update. Obviously, some things have changed since that point, and so we'll kind of go through that. But on the agenda today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about a reminder of what Network Next is, and talk about how we're adapting this project to the COVID-19 crisis. And then talk a little bit about the bus rapid transit BRT portion of the Network Next project, in terms of the planning process that we've developed, as well as the schedule, and talk a little bit about the BRT lines that are under consideration for implementation. And then Robin will talk a little bit about the engagement and next steps associated with this project. So a reminder about what Network Next is. It is essentially Metro Transit's 20-year vision for the future of Metro Transit's bus network. So it does not encompass rail, but it focuses on the local and express bus network, and it's based on improving and expanding our bus network, as well as thinking about incremental investments and implementation over time. And it does require additional operating resources and capital resources to implement. So it's not a reorganization of our bus network so much as a what would we do if we had additional resources available to us to make improvements. It's guided by 3 primary pieces of information. Metropolitan Council policy, primarily in the form of Thrive MSP 2040 and the Transportation Policy Plan. The performance of our existing transit network. Where are the bright spots on our bus network? Where are the challenges that we're facing, and how can we address those? And then input from our customers and the communities that we serve in terms of doing public engagement and trying to better understand the priorities of our riders and the general public. It has 2 primary planned outcomes. First is to identify the planned local and express bus network for 2040. So this is a long-range plan focusing essentially 20 years into the future, but trying to identify what are the steps we need to take between now and then to get to that point. And it will identify improvements to the frequency and span of service on our existing bus routes, as well as identify areas where without service today, where there should be new routes or potentially extensions to existing routes. It will also update the Arterial BRT network. So you may be familiar with the currently operating Metro A line and the Metro C line, just recently opened. We will be identifying as part of this project the additional priorities for new Arterial BRT lines to be implemented after the currently planned Metro E line, which is the last line that is currently identified to be implemented. And that line is planned for construction in 2023. So the updated Arterial BRT network will be identifying the BRT lines that will be implemented after the E line. And so being 2023 and beyond following that. A lot has changed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, as we're all well aware of. Certainly it has impacted the Network Next process and our timeline, both in terms of the overall limitations that we've experienced and adaptations we've had to make on engagement, on planned engagement, and as well as the uncertainty that the pandemic introduces into what are the long-term effects on the local and express bus network, and needing to better understand how ridership and how our community overall will respond to the pandemic, and how that will factor into what our bus network should look like into the future. And so to adapt to those situations, we've put the development of the 2040 local and express bus network on hold for right now. So we had initially planned on making good progress on that by this point, but we are putting that on hold for right now, and we hope to resume that work next year in 2021, when we have a little bit more understanding of how ridership will respond and a little bit more capacity to adequately do that work. However, we are continuing to work on the updated Arterial BRT network. So that's the identification of the F, G, and H lines and beyond. And we hope to complete that work in the spring of 2021. So in March and April timeframe in 2021. And that's what the work that we've been doing so far has been focused on, and that's what the focus of the rest of this update is on, is the work that we've been doing, planning for the rest of the Arterial BRT network. We've taken a 4-step approach to the arterial BRT planning process. The first step is to identify a larger group of potential arterial BRT corridors to be screened and evaluated for their overall fit for arterial BRT implementation. Then the next step is to perform that screening. We did that over the summer of 2020, this past summer, to narrow that larger group down to a smaller group of the most promising candidates for arterial BRT to evaluate and prioritize in a little bit more detail and get to a little bit more manageable group. And that is the result. That is what we'll share today, is the results of that screening process. So we'll share the initial corridors that we identified and then the lines that we plan to do additional work on that made it through that screening process. We'll begin evaluating those corridors identified in step 2 this fall. And then we hope to prioritize those, essentially identifying the top 3 or so lines that will be identified as the F, G, and H lines, the next lines to be implemented. We'll be doing that over the winter and spring, excuse me, of 2020 and 2021. To do all of this work, we applied 4 broad principles to our BRT planning process. And these principles helped us identify the initial candidate corridors, as well as the evaluation criteria, the screening criteria that we use to narrow them down. And they'll help us guide the evaluation criteria as well to help us identify those top 3 lines. They are to advance equity and reduce regional disparities in our region. It's to build on success where we're seeing high ridership today, to grow ridership in the future. And the third is to design a network that supports a transit-oriented lifestyle. And this is essentially to help support walkable communities that are easy to access transit and to get to and from where you are going from the bus stop and out to your destination, and having a little bit more denser residential and employment areas. And then it's to ensure the long-term sustainable growth of the bus network. So we want to make sure that the service that we're putting out there, that we're promising, is something that we can sustain over the long run and continue to have it out there into the long future. So we identified 19 initial corridors that were based on those principles I just talked about, and we specifically used Metro Transit's existing high-frequency network of local routes that run every 15 minutes or better for most of the day on weekdays and Saturdays. We used higher ridership corridors that are not currently part of the high-frequency network. So where are routes that a lot of people are using, but maybe are not exactly part of that network yet? We looked at corridors that were previously studied for arterial BRT, and we looked at network balance. And this is looking at the location of these corridors across the entire region. So, across the East and West Metro and North and South Metro, as well as the role that the particular corridor plays in the bus network. So we know a lot of routes go into downtown, and that's usually our higher ridership routes, and those are pretty useful. But we often hear from community and people who use our network that we need to pay more attention to routes that provide crosstown service that don't necessarily go into downtown and go from suburbs to suburbs as well. So we wanted to make sure that those route types were reflected in this evaluation as well. So this map shows the 19 initial corridors under consideration, and I'll just quickly describe at a high level where each of these corridors goes to and from, sort of working from the northwest to the southeast across our region. So bear with me for a moment as I do that. The first is the corridor is 63rd Avenue and Zane, which is approximately the Route 724, running from Starlight Transit Center to Brooklyn Center Transit Center via Brooklyn Boulevard, Zane Avenue, 63rd, and Xerxes. The second is the Lowry Avenue corridor, which is approximately the Route 32. And that runs from Robbinsdale Transit Center to Rosedale Transit Center via West Broadway, Lowry Avenue, New Brighton Boulevard, and County Road B2. Then we looked at the West Broadway / Cedar Avenue corridor, which is approximately the Route 14 and the Route 22, running from Robbinsdale Transit Center to 38th Street Station via West Broadway, Washington Avenue, Cedar Avenue, and 38th Street. Then we have 2nd Street Northeast, which is the northern part of the Route 11, running from Columbia Heights Transit Center to downtown Minneapolis, primarily via 40th and University, and then the Marshall Terraces neighborhood, and 2nd Street. Then we have the Central Avenue corridor, which is primarily the Route 10, running from Northtown Transit Center to downtown Minneapolis via University Avenue, 53rd Avenue, and Central Avenue. Then the Johnson-Lyndale corridor, which is primarily the Route 4, running from Silver Lake Village to Southtown Shopping Center and the future Orange Line station at Knox Avenue and American Boulevard. And that's primarily via 37th Avenue, Johnson Street, 8th Street, and then into downtown, and then Lyndale Avenue, 50th Street, and Penn Avenue. Then we have the Franklin and University Avenue corridor, which is primarily the Route 2. And that runs from the Green Line, the future Green Line station at 21st Street Station to Central Avenue via Franklin Avenue, Riverside, Washington Avenue, 4th Street and University, and 10th Avenue. Then we had the North Snelling / Lexington corridor, which is primarily the Route 225 today, which is running from Rosedale Transit Center to the future Rice Creek Commons redevelopment in Arden Hills, also known as the Taac site. And that's running primarily via Snelling Avenue North, Hamlin Avenue, Lexington Avenue, and County Road 96. Then we have the East Hennepin Larpenteur Avenue corridor, which is primarily the Route 61, running from downtown Minneapolis to White Bear Avenue via Hennepin Avenue and Larpenteur Avenue. Then we have the Como, Maryland corridor, which is primarily the Route 3, which runs from downtown Minneapolis to Sunray Transit Center via Washington Avenue, 15th Avenue, Como Avenue and Maryland Avenue, and then White Bear Avenue, 3rd Street, and Ruth Street. Then we have the Nicollet Avenue corridor, which is primarily the Route 18, and that runs from downtown Minneapolis to American Boulevard via Nicollet Mall and Nicollet Avenue. Then the 38th Street corridor, which is primarily the Route 23 today, which runs from Uptown Transit Station to Highland Village via Hennepin Avenue, 38th Street, 46th Avenue, and Ford Parkway. Then we have the 66th Street corridor, which is primarily the Route 515 today, running from Southdale Transit Center to the Mall of America via 66th Street, Bloomington Avenue, 77th Street, and 24th Avenue. Then we have the American Boulevard corridor, running from Southwest Station to the Mall of America via I-494, American Boulevard, and 24th Avenue. Then we have the West 7th / White Bear corridor, which is primarily the Route 54 today, running from the Mall of America station to Maplewood Mall Transit Center via the airport, West 7th Street, 5th and 6th Streets through downtown St. Paul, and then East 7th Street, Arcade Street, Maryland, and White Bear Avenue. Then we have Randolph / the East 7th Street corridor, which is primarily the Route 74 today, running from Highland Village to Sunray Transit Center via Cleveland Avenue and Randolph Avenue, and then West 7th Street, 5th and 6th Streets in downtown St. Paul, and then East 7th Street to Hazel and Minnehaha Avenue and Ruth Street. Then we have the Grand Avenue corridor, which is the western portion of the Route 63 today, running from Westgate Station to Union Depot in downtown St. Paul via Grand Avenue, University Avenue in Cretin, and then Grand Avenue, Smith Avenue, and 5th and 6th Streets in downtown. Then we have the Rice-Robert Street corridor, which is the Route 62 and the 68 today, running from Little Canada Transit Center to the Dakota County Northern Service Center via Rice Street, 11th and 12th Street, Robert Street in downtown, and then Mendota Road. And finally, we have the Century Avenue corridor, which is primarily the Route 219 today, running from Maplewood Mall Transit Center to Woodbury Theater, Park and Ride, and the future Gold Line Station via Lydia Avenue, McKnight Road, Kent Road E, and then Century Avenue primarily before going to Woodwinds Hospital and then Valley Creek Road. So that's a description of all of the 19 corridors we considered for screening. Excuse me. And we screened all of those based on a quantitative screening approach using five screening criteria based on the BRT principles. So looking at the percent of people of color and people experiencing poverty on a route, which is associated with advancing equity and reducing regional disparities. Looking at the average daily corridor boardings. So how many people are using the corridor today, and that's associated with building on success to grow ridership. Designing a network that supports a transit-oriented lifestyle, which is has the corridor propensity to use transit. Looking at a number of factors and looking at how likely it is that people will use transit in that area, and then the future planned land use around that particular corridor. And then looking at the existing levels of service out there today compared to BRT service for the insurer, the long-term sustainable growth of the bus network. We also looked at the overall route structure of the underlying routes to kind of see how well we could apply the BRT concept to them. And based on that qualitative screening, ruled out two of the routes of the corridors that we were considering: the 2nd Street Northeast corridor, which is the Route 11, and the Franklin Avenue corridor, which is the Route 2. Both of those were removed because the design of the underlying routes has a pretty indirect route design. So we can't straighten them out to apply kind of the more BRT-oriented design principles without really reducing the overall quality of service in those corridors and kind of defeating the point of those routes, which is to serve the areas that they are serving today. And so this is a map of the BRT corridors to advance. And I'll just list the 11 corridors that are shown in blue here on this map that are advancing. And those corridors are the Nicollet Avenue corridor, the Central Avenue corridor, the West Broadway / Cedar Avenue corridor, the Como, Maryland corridor, the West 7th Street / White Bear Avenue corridor, Randolph / East 7th Street corridor, the Johnson and Lyndale corridor, the 63rd and Zane corridor, the Grand Avenue corridor, and the Lowry Avenue corridor. And that's based on the results of both the quantitative evaluation criteria and the qualitative evaluation criteria that we applied to these criteria here. And so Robin is then going to jump in here and talk a little bit about our next steps for engagement, and then we'll both be happy to take any questions that folks may have.
Thank you, Kyle. I'll provide a little bit of an overview of our engagement plan that we are literally just rolling out today. We just updated a website, so we have a lot of information on our website. We have an interactive map that Kyle mentioned, and we have some of the background documentation posted on our website. As I mentioned, we have the interactive story map that people can go through and look at the different alignments and again get some of the history. And then there's a link to an online survey, so so individuals can go through and look at the map and then provide feedback on the routes. And the questions that we're really asking are, you know, of these 11 routes, which are the ones that you'd be most likely to use? Are there any adjustments or tweaks that we would make to those? And then also, as we narrow down these lines, what should we be, you know, what are the priorities that are highest to you, and are there any adjustments, or again, is there something we're missing? We're hoping to do some sort of virtual meeting. We're still working on the details of that, but as soon as we have that meeting, we can certainly share that with folks, and we'll post it on our website and you know, promote the meeting. We're also open, similar to what we did with listening and learning, if there's community organizations that are interested in having this conversation and getting this presentation, please let us know, and we'd be happy to come out, or not come out, I guess, but present it virtually, and we can talk through and the questions and help promote the link to the survey and the website. We're, like, as I mentioned, we're presenting, you're the first to see this publicly, and we're presenting this to the committee of the whole later this afternoon. And then we're also working with the city partners and counties to help us push out the information and encourage, you know, work with their communities to get feedback. I skipped over one. We're using social media, so we're going to start. We'll push out the links to the survey and the website, but then similar to what we did with the listening and learning exercise, we'll ask questions in the social media and see if we can have a little bit of an online discussion as well. So that's the plan right now, and most of this is going to take place through the month of September. The survey closes on October 9th, so have a little over a month to provide feedback. Kyle and I would, that's all I had, I guess. If anyone has any questions for Kyle, or talk a little bit about outreach.
This is David. Thank you both very much, Kyle and Robin, for that update. Do members have questions?
This is Jeff
Heidi.
Danes.
And I wanted to know if the 75, because you mentioned the one I couldn't remember earlier was the 62, and the other one is the 68, and we also have the 75 in West St. Paul. And I use the 75 because I can connect to another bus to get to the Capitol a lot easier instead of taking the train. I got options, but are you talking about the 75 in any fashion? Because in there you mentioned 2 of the buses we have in West St. Paul, but not the 75.
Mr. Chair, committee members, that's a great question. The Route 75 was not considered for arterial BRT, one of the arterial BRT corridors, but that does get at something that the other part of Network Next that we're not presenting on today, which is the part that was delayed until 2021, and that's improvements to other local and express bus routes. And so just because a route is not identified for arterial BRT does not mean it's not a good candidate for other upgrades for service. And I think the 75 would be a candidate for other frequency or span improvements, or potentially extensions to other parts of West St. Paul, or even on the north end. And so that work will be beginning again in 2021. And so if folks do have thoughts about specific local route improvements that they'd want, we'd be open to those, but we'll be kind of banking those comments and saving those for use in 2021.
Very helpful because between the 75 and the 68, that's a very popular, and sometimes the 62, it depends on if they're working or not.
This is Ken. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Ken, and then Jeff Daines.
Okay. I just have an observation, and I'm sure this is probably part of your conversation at some point, but I'm a little concerned that so the priorities or the points that you use to evaluate each of these alignments, you identified, I believe there were 6 points. The first one was the equity piece, the equity lens that you looked at those routes through that lens. None of those lenses that you identified involved climate or the environment. I'm kind of curious about that. Did you guys have discussions about climate effect that each of those alignments would affect?
Mr. Chair, committee members, that's another really great question. You know, I think not directly. You observed correctly that specific climate effects are not directly captured in part of these screening criteria. However, you know, I think in general, we feel that the more people who are riding transit, the better it is for overall climate metrics. And so looking at things from, you know, both building on success to grow transit ridership and kind of trying to increase transit ridership where we can, where it's already successful, is a good way to grow transit ridership and then potentially be pulling people out of cars or other unsustainable modes. And similarly, the designing a network that supports a transit-oriented lifestyle criteria that will help people use transit for more trip purposes other than, you know, kind of the standard, you know, 9 to 5 commute, which I think is perhaps overrepresented in kind of how people think about transit, will also help people use transit for other trip purposes, which would then benefit, which would have climate effect, which would have beneficial effects on climate.
Yep, and I appreciate that, but all of those are secondary to climate change, and I'm just wondering why there wouldn't be more of an emphasis as a point of criteria for looking at climate change and environment, as that's really a critical component that we're more and more dealing with these days.
Mm-hmm. And maybe
just a thought.
Sure, Mr. Chair and council member or committee members, I think something that would be helpful for us to today, as we're, you know, beginning the evaluation of these additional lines. So there's another evaluation step to help us prioritize these 11 corridors that we've advanced here. And so if committee members have, so one, this is already helpful input, but two, if you have, you know, specific thoughts on evaluation criteria that might capture that thought, I think that would be helpful for us to get as well. If you've got specific criteria, that would be interesting.
Chair, can I be in queue to ask a question?
Yes, I know Jeff Daines had a question, and then Daryl, go ahead after Jeff.
My question was, you mentioned about being walkable. I didn't understand exactly what that particular evaluation meant. If you could explain that a little more.
Mr. Chair, committee members, yeah, that's a great question. So I was in that one. That was under the design a network that supports a transit-oriented lifestyle overall criteria. And I should say, trying to capture a more pedestrian-friendly environment. So the propensity to use transit measure, and bear with me for a moment as I kind of dig into the weeds here a little bit, but that corridor propensity to use transit measure takes 4 factors into consideration, and one of those is the overall pedestrian friendliness of a particular area, and so we know, for example, that areas that have better sidewalks that are easy to access the bus stop from places, but also then access destinations from the bus stop, lead to better transit use and better transit outcomes and an overall better transit experience. And we want to be making sure that we are making transit investments in those areas that exist today, and then also encouraging more of those areas to be developed by our local government partners who are in charge of sidewalks.
That's what I was referring to, the local government partnership, county and city. A lot of cities and counties talk about being pedestrian friendly, but the dollars aren't always ponied up to do that. And that's a very large concern I have, having ridden the 10 and the 62 and the 61 and several of those routes that you mentioned, northern routes. There's a lot of places you get off the bus and there isn't even a sidewalk. So,
yeah, that's right. And that, excuse me, Mr. Chair and committee members, that's right. That's something we want to improve as part of these investments as well. I think that's part of a package of overall improvements.
Thank you.
Well, and Kyle, that brings me to my point. This is Daryl Paulson, Vice Chair. We talked a little bit today about perceived safety or perceived security issues. I mean, I think that brings it back to Ken's point about the climate issue, about climate change. I mean, we have really strong weather in Minnesota, and either it's really hot or it's really cold, and folks with disabilities don't often operate very well in both of those extremes. So, and we're not even looking at lighting or perceived safety issues along the corridor. There's many routes along the 11 that you mentioned that if we would just improve some lighting or some intersectional lighting in the intersection there, that would give the perception that this bus line is a little safer or this route is a little safer. And until actual staff makes an investment in lighting and understand that just putting some lighting out there gives the perception that this is a little safer, I think it'd be a lot cheaper than investing in real-time monitoring or anything like that we all often invest in along the station or along the light rail. We invest in real-time monitoring there at times, but I think lighting is a lot cheaper, and you'll get more bang for your buck.
Mr. Chair, committee members, yeah, that's a really great point. And as part of, so not really as part of the evaluation process for these corridors, but as part of the investment that these corridors represent, there's a significant improvement to the overall stop and station experience, and that includes quite a bit of investment in lighting that both improves both the real and perceived safety environment. So each of these lines would have upgraded stations that would have lighting improvements, time signage improvements, accessible transit information, and arrival time information, shelters from inclement weather. I think you mentioned. So all the shelters at each of these stations have heat and space to wait inside the shelter. So completely agree that those types of investments can make a big difference in the overall experience using transit, and that's part of the point of these investments. And we're excited to implement as many of these as we can.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then as well
This
as
is Heidi. I was just wondering, I did the walkability accessibility thing, and I wanted to know if that was the same thing you were talking about earlier. And then the other thing, are you going to be working on making sure that vandalism doesn't happen when you put these new features in? Because I'm at a lot of bus stops that hadn't been fixed in years. Those are my questions.
Mr. Chair, committee members, I apologize. I missed the first portion of Heidi's question.
My question is, I did the walkability before COVID-19, where we were down at the library in Minneapolis, and we ended up going around and giving what we liked and what we didn't like about sidewalks and some of the things you talked about. Is that the same thing, that the walkability, and we got paid like $50, to do it? And then the other thing is, you said you were going to upgrade or thinking about doing it, but are you going to be looking at vandalism? Because I've been at bus stops that have not had heat or lights or certain things for years. And then across the street, there's another bus stop that's been fixed. So I don't get your operation and how you do things. If you can answer my two questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, committee members, yeah, I think so. I apologize. I'm not familiar with the event, Heidi, that you were describing of kind of what I understand to be like a walk through downtown, kind of an accessibility assessment of sidewalks and that type of thing. When I was referring to walkability, I should have been calling that more pedestrian friendliness. And so I think it does try to get at some of those same types of things, but at a higher level. So not necessarily specific features of sidewalks per se, but rather at this level of analysis, more looking at the presence or absence of sidewalks. Though I should say, when we're designing this, when we're implementing and designing the stations, we do sort of use the best practices for accessibility, and certainly welcome certainly welcome the input from this community, from this committee, and from overall accessibility best practices and sort of the specific design of those things. And then with regards to your second question around maintenance, I will have to, I think, get back to the committee on kind of maybe more, or maybe this is a question actually, Robin, if I could put you on the spot, that you might know a little bit more about in terms of our overall maintenance practices. But we generally follow, try to address maintenance issues as we identify them. But
yeah, I can maybe take a stab at that. At the question is, we have our engineering and facilities. They do, they do routes and double check status of shelters and bus stops, and they'll do, they'll note and do repairs as needed. Sometimes it may take a little while to order parts or get materials in. So that sometimes may take a few weeks to do. We also, people can submit comments or call our customer relations hotline, and people can report, that they see a station or a shelter damaged, and that'll get it on the, on the list to monitor or to do the necessary repairs. In addition to that, we do have a program that it's where we'll do, it's called Better Bus Stops, where we've been going through and making improvements, identifying stops that need some repairs or upgrading. Maybe they need some light or heat, very depending on ridership volumes. And so they'll usually look for those stations or stops and put them on a list and then budget for them, order the parts. And then normally they would be doing that. The repairs, they would have had them done already this year. They're just getting, because of COVID, we got a little bit behind. So they're just going out and making some of those, upgrades as necessary. They're just starting now. So every year there's a handful of shelters and stations that we do those repairs, and maybe more of a significant investment.
So right across the Met Console building where we're supposed to have our meeting today, can you check to see if the heat lamps have been fixed? Because it's been years since it's been fixed. The buttons are broken and the light, and I don't know if they had, because that's the bus I have to take back to West St. Paul all the time.
Sure, I can check on the status. We actually turn the heat off in the wintertime or in the summertime, so that people don't just push the button and we pay to heat it. Because of course there's some electricity for that.
It's just broken. That's the problem.
That's the problem. There was plans, and I don't remember the specific shelters off the top of my head, but there were some plans to do some improvements to some of the downtown shelters. Again, due to COVID, some of those have been pushed back into next year. So I'm not sure about this one in particular, but it sounds like it's at Robert and is it 7th? Or Robert and 6th?
Across from the Met Console. I'm looking straight at the Met Console building,
So
where we have our meetings every month.
This is David. Hold on, Heidi, just 1 second. This is David. So just a reminder to members, when you do experience damage or other issues like this, definitely, call them in, submit, the form online if you prefer to do that. That's actually the best way to have these sorts of issues brought to the attention of Metro Transit and the Met Council. Doing it here just adds an extra. Hold on, Heidi. Hold on. Please wait for me to finish, Heidi. Doing it here just adds 1 or 2 more steps to the process, and does sometimes take time for other things that we do here. It is important for our committee to know that these issues do happen. So I don't want to restrict that completely, but I just want to remind you all that submitting it through the proper channels, it is actually the best way to have that powered by Metro Transit. But go ahead, Heidi, if you want to say something.
She was saying it. It's almost like I had to say it because it wasn't even being taken care of, because she said she had maintenance people come out and certain people looking, at the site, but then how can it just be passed by over and over and over unless something is being missed or someone's not doing their homework? That's what we're trying to figure out as a community, because people have been complaining about it so many different ways. It's unbelievable, because I hear it every day when I'm at the bus stop. So I just wanted to bring it up. I'm trying to match up how she's telling us and how it really works, and then go with what you're saying too. And you're right.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Heidi. I think, Daryl, did you have a follow-up question that you weren't able to ask? And if not, I'd like to open the floor just for 1 or 2 more questions from people. Again, I want to give folks who haven't spoken on this topic a question to speak on this topic. If you have a question or comment for Kyle or Robin.
So this is Ken.
Go ahead, Ken.
Just a suggestion, Robin. I think we have a lot of processes in place to address issues. I don't think we do a very thorough job of educating the public on some important pieces that they could be a partner with. Like, for example, if there was several signs, and they could be pretty signs or appropriate signs in shelters that say, if you see something broken, report it, or just some method of educating the public on a way that they can be involved or be more of a partner in this process. I think that would go a long way, because I think people recognize that when there are things that are broken or not working, but don't know what to do. And we have these programs in place that could address that if we only knew, and we can't have eyes everywhere, obviously. So we need to partner more with the public. And if there's a way to educate the public more about those types of ways they can be involved, I think that would be really helpful.
Thank you, Ken. Did I hear? Was it Jeff that?
This is Eric.
Yeah, I did have another question.
So go ahead.
In regards to the suburb to suburb concept that was presented, this goes back to what Ken said about climate change and being green, and there aren't very many buses that do connect suburb to suburb. And I've always wondered, I've heard it's based on percentage of ridership, but what are you really looking at with that? And is there really any real support for that? Because again, that becomes the funding issue if it's based on percentage of ridership. But I certainly hear from a lot of people in suburbs talking about wanting to go to another suburb instead of having to ride a bus all the way downtown. Like the 10, you can take all the way down to 61, take the 61 over to 62 and go up to Shoreview. If you wanted to go from Fridley to Shoreview, there really isn't any accessible route that works in regards to that. So I just wonder what that concept is about suburb to suburb.
Mr. Chair, committee members, yeah, it's a great question, and that you've described that concept exactly. So it's trying to go from one suburb to another, or one point in the suburbs to another point without having to go downtown. And I think, excuse me, that is something we hear about quite a bit. It does become, those routes tend to be relatively low ridership, and that's just, there's nothing, wrong with that per se. It's kind of the role that they're playing in the overall network, is that there's just fewer people going from one point to another, and there's a lot more different points all spread apart from each other in the suburbs, and so it's harder to kind of serve that overall market with a transit line that's in a fixed spot. But certainly, we try to incorporate some of the highest performing suburb to suburb routes in our evaluation here for arterial BRT, and then going forward in the Network Next process for the local and express bus route improvements in 2021. That's also something that we're considering and thinking more about is how to improve that experience, while at the same time making sure that we're not reducing the usability and usefulness of kind of our core highest ridership routes that serve the most people. So certainly it's a challenge, yeah.
This is David. There was one person who was going to speak.
I think that
speak.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's I think that was me, Eric Henriksen. I just had a quick question, and it goes back to the quantitative screening. I noticed that the percent of people of color and the percent of people experiencing poverty were taken into account on these underlying routes. At any time, were the percent of people with disabilities taken into account?
Mr. Chair, committee members, yeah, that's another great question. Not in this initial screening, but certainly we have a more detailed evaluation process ahead of us, where I think, excuse me, people with disabilities will be considered as part of that evaluation.
This is David. Thank you, Kyle and Robin. Just a quick note about Eric's question. Gathering statistics on folks with disabilities is a little more difficult than other minority groups, but I do know that the Met Council is sympathetic to using that data as well in their assessment and screening like this. So we will move on to the last agenda item, which is me. Thank you again, Kyle. Thank you again, Robin. So I will just kick this off here. In March, we passed 2 motions, or I guess resolutions, if you want to call them that. And that was the culmination of many years of discussing.
Point of clarification, Chair. They're not resolutions. There is that technical term for resolutions. Yeah, they are motions. We did pass a motion.
Thank you, sir. I do appreciate that. Yes, so we passed 2 motions in regards to accessible seating issues that have always been a thing and something that this committee has revisited quite frequently over many years. But in using those motions, I would like to, and this was at the advice of the Vice Chair, Daryl Paulson, that we send a letter essentially telling what the motions are that we passed and giving some background in that on those motions to the chair and to the Metropolitan Council members. So what I'm going to do, I drafted a letter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read it to you all. I'm going to read the 2 motions first. Everything in the letter, I would say, has to fit into the 2 motions. Given that that's what the body agreed on, were those 2 motions. So I'm going to read the letter out loud for folks. I would like input on content of the letters, not necessarily where things are in the letter or grammar, but I'll look for some content inclusion or things to exclude from the letter. And then after that, I would like maybe 2 or 3 volunteers to work with me to then do the formal drafting of the letter based on the content that we discussed, maybe over the next couple weeks, and then we will submit the letter to the chair and to the full council. So I'm just going to kick it off here, and remember, this is a draft.
And just so you know, Chair, I did have a separate meeting with some folks from the Met Council. Robin Kaufman was on that call as well, and I did put them on notice that the letter was coming. And yes, we did expect a formal response to our letter, and they seem to be awaiting our letter and welcoming our letter, and can't wait to see what's in it. So. I just wanted to
David,
let the
was he allowed to do that? Was he allowed to do that or go ahead and say something like that without the committee's permission?
As long as I'll answer the question, Daryl. As long as it is within the scope of the motions that we passed, then yes. And actually, any member can talk with anybody about a motion that is passed, because that's the will of the body. But it has to be within the scope of those motions. If you're speaking for Taac, if you're speaking just as an advocate or a person who uses transit, by all means. But if you're speaking on behalf of Taac, it has to be something that has been approved by the majority of committee members. So in short, Heidi, yes, it's okay.
That's a very good explanation. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. All right, so I'm just going to read the letter that I have. And remember, it's a draft, so we can do wordsmithing later. But I'm asking for content inclusion here from you all. All right, so I started out, Chair Zelli and Metropolitan Council members, on March 4th of 2020, 2 motions were passed. I list the motions. I'll read them right now to you. The motions are: Taac supports increasing the amount of priority and accessible seating on fixed route buses. And the second motion is Taac supports an awareness campaign on the uses of priority and accessible seating and its importance to people with disabilities, transportation, and the general public. So those are the 2 motions we passed. The following letter that I'm going to read to you, I think it's within the scope of those 2 motions. So I'm going to read the letter to you now. The fixed route bus system is for everybody: workers, shoppers, people with disabilities, parents, etc. Priority seating mandated by the ADA is for folks with disabilities and those who are aging. Metro Transit is in full compliance with the ADA. If someone needs the priority seating because of a disability, and the priority seating is full, the bus driver is required to ask somebody to move. If they do not, if the bus driver does not ask this of people in priority seating, then they are out of step with the procedures of Metro Transit, and they should be disciplined and have training. Not all disabilities are visible. Therefore, the bus driver cannot make a determination on who does or does not have a disability. A pass up, and I put pass up in quotes, is when there is no spot for someone on a bus. It is a policy the driver call in every pass up, call in, so that would be call in every pass up situation, and then the bus driver must ensure that there is space on the next bus, and that bus is no more than 30 minutes away. If it will be more than 30 minutes, the driver is required to call in another form of transportation for the person that was passed up. And then I go into some data on pass-ups. January through June of 2019, there was a total of 7. So the first 6 months of 2019, there was a total of 766 pass-ups, 360 of which were somebody who uses a wheelchair. Therefore, in the first 6 months of 2019, 47% of the pass-ups were folks who use a wheelchair. That's the data, and we can update the data. I'll work with Doug on updating the data too. But that's just what I have in my notes from our March meeting.
Chair, I would urge you to talk to Guthrie Meyer. He's the ADA. I believe he's the ADA Title II coordinator for Met Council. He's got the data for you too. He can probably pop it in there for you.
Sounds good. I'll include him if
I think it would be great, this is Heidi, if you have the 19 and the 20, as much, so they can look at a couple of different years that were, because this has been going on for not just 1 year, it's been going on for several years. So if we can give them a little history, that would be awesome.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, Heidi, this has been going on. I have, in 4 months, I have had 20 years of being with the Met Council and Metro Transit, particularly with Taac. So in about 4 months, we'll have 20 years there, myself personally, and I know we've talked about this for on and off for at least a decade. So
thank you. Thank you, Heidi and Daryl. They're both good suggestions. I wrote the note down, Heidi, to include other years of pass-up data. I think that's a really good idea. So I'm going to jump into some anecdotal evidence that we have now as well, based on our personal experience and things that we've seen and heard. The first one is that not every pass-up is necessarily called in. Also, the 30-minute rule is not necessarily always followed. And also that bus drivers do not always ask people in the priority seating to move if there is somebody waiting to get on the bus that clearly needs one of those priority seats. Also, there are a lot of different things that end up in priority seating. Some of those items would be furniture items, folks with more than 2 large grocery bags, and strollers. So that is the extent of the letter so far. Does anybody have anything they would like me to add or take away? And I'm going to go to committee members first, and then I can work with other Metro Transit and Metropolitan Council staff as well. But committee members, are there things that you want me to add to the anecdotal evidence or to the verbiage that I read to you?
Can you add in there? There has been some because I've had this happen where someone didn't want to, you know, and the bus driver didn't do anything. But I don't want there to be a giant fight, you know, in an argument, or
Right.
they're pissed off because they have the legal right to sit there when, you know, when the person with the disability. Because I've seen where someone said, "You need to move. I need to sit there," and he legally had the right to be there because he was disabled, you know. And he wasn't doing anything wrong because he had a cart, he had a family, he had also. So how do we work on that too? You know, the scary parts of when people get like a little mean.
So what did you want me to add in to the letter?
We could talk about also, I don't know how you write it, or talk about that there's also been some scary, you know, like almost like it's a fight, but it's because it happened to me. It's almost
Heidi,
like a fight.
if I can
But
help you
I don't
out,
know if
Heidi.
we could. I'm trying to. It's not just about the strollers. It's not just about that. It's also people respecting each other, and because there has been some bad things. I don't know how to describe it.
To Heidi's point, there's been minor altercations on the bus when somebody has asked somebody to move for a legitimate reason. They say no, they don't have to move, and then an altercation may or may not break out. That has happened with my family as well as without my family. So that does happen. And that brings me to another point that I forgot to mention when we were talking previous, David. Is there a way that we can incentivize individuals that have the ability to maybe move but don't have to move because it's their right to sit there, they need to sit there, but if they can move, is there a way to incentivize that and say, hey, I'll give you a free bus ride if you can just help me, I'll help you move your stroller back, or I'll help you slide back one seat or something, so we can get this individual in this seat or whatever. If there's a way to do that, I know they do it in Las Vegas a lot. I know they do it in California a lot because I've seen it done. So if there's a way we can incentivize people for having to move, that might actually help deter some of the altercations or some of those fights that Heidi might be referring to.
So as far as I know, and I think that maybe have a Met Council Metro Transit staff chime in, I think that actually is possible, but I don't know to what extent it occurs. But somebody can chime in.
In my case, I don't see it happening unless I ask for it, and then if
So do bus drivers have the ability to offer a free ticket, a free bus ride to somebody who you know is in priority seating and does move? Is that even an option for a bus driver?
Well, we got to be careful because Minnesota, I've seen on the bus, I don't want people to abuse it. At the same time, Daryl has a good idea, you know.
That's good.
So we got to be careful. And Daryl's right. There has been, and he answered my question about the altercation of, if I'm saying the word right, where I don't want to start an argument when the people really with the disability should sit there. But Daryl makes a good point too. But how do we do it in a way that is not being abused?
Okay, thank you, Heidi. So I'm going to wait for an answer from.
Well, there is an answer on the chat from Clarissa. Drivers are encouraged to use free ride coupons to encourage people to move. They are trained on this as part-time operators and when they go full-time as well.
All right, this is David. I will include that in here. I think I'm going to.
Can we get some data around that, because you make a valid point of the 46% pass ups are people in chairs. And if we can get some data around how many times we offer those free rides to people to move, I think that could either make our point or break our point, actually. Either way, and I want to see it either way. So
Okay. Thank you, Clarissa.
David, this is Eric.
Go ahead, Eric.
Do we want the letter to hone in on the scope or breadth of public outreach? I think the second motion is to publicly, get the message out there about the importance of the seats. So do we want to help define that or shape that level of outreach? I mean, if they're like fine and then it's just a brochure, like I don't know how much good that would do.
no.
Yep, I think that's a good question, Eric. And I don't see why not. I think maybe we can do maybe a bulleted list of some suggestions, whether it's a video that we can help contribute to. I do have one bullet point in here under that particular motion that says Taac is willing to contribute to the content and production of PSA materials, but I think that a list here wouldn't be bad. So we have, I'd like for there to be a video. I think that's something good because then they can see, us using the bus.
Yeah, and in social media terms in today's world, videos, a 30-second video, 45 seconds, it goes a long way, and it's
diversity, with different groups of people, not just all white people, it's just like, because we have a mixed variety in Minnesota that uses the bus, so we need to advertise, if we're going to do advertising of any kind, that it meets all different types of people and different languages, so they can read it in Spanish or Hmong, whatever language they're in, so this gets across, because I see everybody abusing the handicap seats. It doesn't matter where you're from.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. And so Claire did clarify in the chat, and I'll read it for folks who are on the phone, that there is no way to track the operators giving out free ride coupons, or why the operators give out free ride coupons. So they kind of go for a whole bunch of things, but they don't currently track that. So thank you, Claire, for clarifying that.
David, do we need to ask that in the future so it can be part of the program?
Yeah.
It can be a formal request from our committee. We can make formal requests of the Metropolitan Council and Metro Transit, about anything. So yeah, if we want to say, hey, look, can you track that data? They might say, no, we can't, and that's the end of it.
Right.
But we can ask. I don't know how.
I think Heidi likes to put our leaders on the spot, and you on the spot, particularly David, and say, do you think that would be a legitimate thing that we should be tracking, and we could ask them to track?
Yeah, my answer would be it might be more work than it's worth, but it's something that we can address at a future meeting with a different agenda item. We're pushing up on the last 5 minutes here of our meeting. I'm gonna forego my update. Ken already jumped off. Chris is not here. I'm just gonna jump kind of ahead just a little bit here so we can finish our agenda items and then maybe come back and spend 1 or 2 more minutes on this. Daryl, did you have any updates on the Golden Rush line?
I'll have more updates after tomorrow. I'll forward them to you ahead of time so they can be put in the minutes the next month.
Thank you. Is there public comment? Are there member comments?
I have a comment, Sam Jasmine. Just in
Sorry,
regards
there is public
to...
comment, but I was muted too. But I'm happy to wait for Sam.
Go ahead, Sam, and then we'll come back to Andy.
Oh, hi, Andy. It was just in regards to the tracking of the giving out free coupons from the bus drivers. I suspect that, I don't mean to be a negative nanny here, but I suspect that that will be hard to track, and because the bus drivers will have to do it, and I'm feeling that they're already in a lot of pressure now, and then that's one more thing that they're not going to want to do. But that's my opinion.
I would tend to agree, and for any further discussion on this matter, I think we should have an agenda item. But I would tend to agree with you, Sam. Is there any more member comment? And this is about anything, not this letter or any discussion that we've had today.
I have something for Andy, but I don't know if he can answer my question.
So member comment is not necessarily a question to staff. It's just a time for you to express a concern.
Yeah, I was expressing a concern, but it goes to Andy, who works for Metro Mobility, because it happened today.
Is it something that can be taken offline, Heidi, or do you want the entire?
I didn't know if I thought, because we're having a meeting today, and I didn't know if he was going to talk or not about stats and stuff. And I didn't know, maybe we can talk offline, but it had to do with, I was thinking of when people sign up, is there a better way to do it? Because there was a mix-up today, and I had to help one of the Metro Mobility drivers that came to our door. So
people sign up for what?
Talk about it.
When people sign up for what?
Well, when you sign up for Metro Mobility, do they, because I thought when I signed up, you had to give your complete address, including your apartment number, and they only have the first and last. It was like the same name. And then I went to the landlord, the person who runs the building, and they figured out which apartment he was from. And I don't know if it's Metro Mobility's fault or if it's the company that, because we have now merged, and how they put it in the system. So I was just asking, because the driver was doing everything politically correct. He just couldn't find the person. So I went to I just happened to see him struggling.
Thank you, Heidi. I think that can be answered offline. I want to give the public a chance to comment. So Andy, I don't know if you're a proxy or you are the public, but bring your comment, please.
I am the public. If everybody scrolls up to the first comment on the chat, you will see that Metro Mobility was recently made aware of a Lindale Whitaker bike lane project. So we just reached out to make sure everybody understood that we would still need to use the bike lane occasionally to park, to pick up and drop off. The city's aware of that and is cool with it. But they also mentioned that the public comment period for that is open. So I just wanted to make sure and bring that to Taac. A variety of ways of contacting both the planner and the engineer are included in the chat. I put it in at the start of the meeting because I believe, unfortunately, with this app, the chat function goes away at the end of the meeting. So maybe keep the meeting open for a little bit afterwards, Allison, to give people time to copy and paste or otherwise record the contact information if they want to check it out. Not our project, and we don't have much info on it, but if you want to reach out to the city of Minneapolis through those avenues provided, they should be able to help you with that. Thanks much, all.
Perfect. We have 1 minute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send out this draft letter, and just please be aware that it's a draft of a letter to the Taac members. In my email, I will ask for well, actually, I'll just ask you all right now. Are there 1 or 2 people who want to work on the wordsmithing and the grammar of this letter with myself?
This is Eric. I would volunteer for that.
Okay, who else?
David, I'd like to see the letter just by default.
Yes.
I'll let you guys work on it, but make sure I see it.
Was that you, Sam?
Yeah, it was.
All right. I need grammar people and wordsmith people because that's not my strong suit. So Sam, Eric, and then I'll probably loop in Guthrie or Doug if they have the time, if they're able, just for statistics and for policy stuff. Maybe Claire as well, since she seems to know all the answers. All right, so I'm going to send this out to you all. I appreciate.
But just so the committee knows, the letter will have gone out by the time our next meeting is happening, I hope.
Yep.
And we may or may not have a response, but we will be asking in the letter for a response, which we'll typically wait about 4 to 6 weeks before we ask them again to respond. So.
Chair and members of the committee, this is Claire Schleichert speaking with the Department of Office of Equal Opportunity. Sorry, Daryl, I didn't mean to cut you off there. If I did, I apologize. I just wanted to say real quick, if you have any questions about that, David, let me know, and I'm more than willing to talk with you offline. One other thing I did want to mention was it is not just Metropolitan Council or Transit procedure that they ask, but it is the law. And it is written in the FTA circular, and I can get that for you if you'd like the language on that to strengthen your letter.
Yes.
And then obviously from a personal standpoint, I just want to applaud you guys for bringing this forward to the council. Extremely important. Our operators need to be held accountable on this. And we can train and train and train on it, but I think that a campaign to enforce the importance of this for the public would be extremely important as well, and go a long way towards helping our operators get people to move out of that area so you guys can get a spot on the bus.
That would be great, Claire. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we could actually make it fun. We could actually do a spoof like, this is the way it used to be, where we required strollers to be folded before they ride the bus. But now you don't have to do it because we know strollers come in all sizes and all shapes. And why not? I mean, it could be fun. It could be fun.
I'm very hesitant to yeah. Well, I think the video could be cute and fun, and do a good job of highlighting,
And I think most of your drivers that have been there, at least I would say most of the drivers that have been there more than 7 years, are aware of what the policy used to be like and what the policy is now, and some of the drivers don't even notice a big change because they run their bus like it's their ship, and they run it that way all the time. So,
hey David, are you going to have enough time by the next meeting to get all your information? Because I don't want this to be a rush job. I want it to be done right, so we are heard and we're taken very seriously. So if it takes 2 months to put together, please.
We're not spending another 2 months on this. We're not doing it. We're spending 2
Hey,
weeks
Daryl,
on it.
please
That's
let
it.
me finish on this because this is very important. I don't want I don't want this to be a rush job where it's not, I want to make sure if there is some appropriate things that need to be looked at, and we get the right data, whatever, and it takes a little bit to do, but we could throw it together because we don't know if we're going to have to speak in front of them or David's going to have to come up with something later. So I want him to be prepared, and with the letter, I don't want it to be a rush job where we sound sloppy and we didn't do our homework, because we have a valid point and we could do so much if we do it right. So if you have to take another month, please do it correctly, and that's just my opinion, my thoughts,
Thank you, Heidi. That's a good point. It won't be a rush job. We've been working on this for a long time. We'll get everything in there that we need to get in there. And to Daryl's point, this has been going on for a long time. I think there is some readiness for this to be in the hands of officially in the hands. I mean, they already know what we do here. What we do here is not in secret. So all of our information, all of this information has flowed through the Metropolitan Council and Metro Transit. This is just more of a more formal way to do it. So it will be put together nicely. It won't be a rush job, and we're gonna try and get this in their hands as soon as possible. Which I don't think it'll take 2 months. I think we're probably looking at less than 1 month. But I do feel your sense of urgency, Daryl. But I also understand, Heidi. You know, you want this to be just right, and I think we can fulfill both of your desires. We are 5 minutes over, and so I will adjourn the meeting now. Again, people feel free to reach out to me, but I'm gonna get in contact with Sam and Eric, and some Metro Transit folks, and get this letter written.
And don't forget me. I'm watching.
I know you are, Daryl. I will never forget. All right. So everybody, thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your day. And signing off. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody who's left.
Thank you.
Thank
you, David. Hey, David, can you make sure Allison copies the chat and send that out with her notes so that we can see the chat?
Did you pick that up, Allison? I'll do it just in case. I'm copying and pasting it here just in case.
Yeah, I did put it. I did send a message out through the chat to everyone, but I don't see that she commented on it. So
all right,
that's how it's done in all other meetings. They just copy the chat and then paste it along with the minutes.
All right, I'm gonna sign off, but I did copy and paste all the chat into a Word doc just in case.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.